Good morning. This is Sherry Perlman with your Morning Minute, and this is going to be longer than a minute. So I'm here talking about neurodevelopmental disorders and learning differences, and both are categories of conditions that affect cognitive, social, and emotional functioning. And it should be noted that sensory processing and executive functioning issues challenge many people across these diagnoses. So sensory processing is one of the most challenging issues, but it's very manageable. Our whole nervous system relies on the ability to dampen sensory stimulation coming in, so it's the just right amount of information for us to handle and to make adaptive responses to the environment with, which happens on the neuronal level. It's also necessary to have the right amount of stimulation of our sensory systems to register in our cortex to make sense of where we are and how we're moving and how dangerous something is to touch, or so we can remove our hands. But more on that another time. There are neuroendocrine, neurotransmitter differences that impact initiation and carry through of tasks, which is often described by people as laziness or not trying hard enough or depression or procrastination, but it's actually often a physiological deficit in dopamine, which is seen primarily, but again, in many of these differences, but primarily in ADHD. But ADHD presents itself in autism spectrum disorders, in nonverbal learning disorders. And there's usually often executive functioning issues when there is ADHD, with or without hyperactivity. So to review, neurodevelopmental disorders or differences include autism spectrum, attention deficit, intellectual disabilities, specific learning disabilities like dyslexia, which is, as most of you know it, switching of letters, but also is reading comprehension, dysgraphia, which is difficulty writing, dyscalculia, which is difficulty with math, dyspraxia, which is motor planning difficulties, and motor disorders. The learning differences certainly affect academic performance, but also really impact emotional and social feeling of being intact. So dyslexia, identifying speech sounds and learning how they relate to letters and words and reading comprehension. Dyscalculia, as I just mentioned, dysgraphia, nonverbal learning disorders. So while developmental disorders encompass a broad range of conditions affecting development, learning disorders specifically focus on difficulties in acquiring and using academic skills, social and executive functioning. Both types of disorders or differences can significantly impact an individual's emotional functioning, since overload and frustration cause frequent meltdowns, and they can look like aggression. People are misunderstood and labeled as difficult when they don't understand the impact of these invisible differences. So a person with one of these invisible differences could think that they're too much, not understand that they're not being aggressive or difficult. Their nervous system is just on overload. And then people can misunderstand them and avoid them and feel like they're difficult. It's incredibly painful to them to see how easily other people who are more neurotypical can navigate the world seamlessly and not be misunderstood. Narcissistic injury throughout the day feels traumatic and can have the same neurophysiological impact on the nervous system as trauma. So PTSD in people with learning differences looks the same as it does in the nervous system when somebody is triggered because of prior abuse or neglect, or mistreatment or misattunement. And people with learning differences have PTSD throughout the day. So while most of us function here at baseline and sometimes go up a little and then come back to baseline, people with sensory processing overload or dopamine issues, if this is baseline, they can be down here and they can go up and then and it feel like a roller coaster because of how difficult everything is. And they remember something from the past being difficult, and then they're presented with the need to do it in the present moment, and they can have a PTSD or fight, flight, fright response and either dissociate or get aggressive or look aggressive and have a meltdown, and more, and I'll get into that more. But I hope that this series brings some light and understanding and a chance at healing for parents, therapists, and individuals with these invisible differences. Have a great day.